Welcome to Fresh Outlook. I'm Frank Cipolla. Another week, another two candidates jump into the race for president. This time, businessman Donald Trump and former Florida Governor Jeb Bush. The field of GOP hopefuls now at an even dozen, growing by the minute, and we're still about a year and a half from Election Day 2016. So who will eventually emerge as the Republican candidate for president? And is Hillary Clinton's nomination on the Democratic side a foregone conclusion? Joining us to make sense of all of this is Professor of Communications at Western Connecticut State University, Jackie Guzda. We have Political Science Professor at St. Peter's University in New Jersey, Alan Sanders, and David Goodman with the Central New Jersey chapter of Represent.us. And we're going to be discussing this political campaign, which is getting more interesting, I must tell you. And I don't remember a modern presidential campaign that had this many candidates this soon. And I'm not referring to an individual candidate or as a group, but we have more or less a clown car. Every time the door opens, two or three of them pop out. How did we get to this point?
Everybody wants to be part of it.
But how did we get to this many candidates who think they could make a difference?
I think it's because we have had a lack of leadership for the past 8 years. Obama has not proven to be a formidable or a competent political leader. Mr. Boehner has not emerged as a competent political leader, and so since we've had a lack of leadership, everybody thinks they can fill that void, and that's particularly true on the Republican side. Obviously, the opposing party always feels that it can do better, and on the Democratic side, I mean, we do have sort of a 800-pound gorilla, which is Hillary, but you see some movement there too, some minor candidates, and it's all, in my view, because we haven't had any real political leaders.
Frank, well, David Goodman, money is a big part of this.
Well, I'm going to take a different view of this, Frank. I don't think leadership, frankly, is the issue, with all due respect. I think the whole issue is about money. We're talking about a campaign cycle which is estimated to be spending $10 billion in 2016. That's after $7 billion was spent in 2012. Jeb Bush spent the first 6 months of this year from December being what I call the uncandidate. That's sort of like the Uncola.
Some of us remember that.
Exactly. He ran, but he didn't run. And why did he do that? So that he could raise an estimated $100 million through his super PAC, Right to Rise, and through his dark money 501c4, Right to Rise Policy Solutions. Okay. On the other side, Hillary Clinton is estimated she's shooting for $2.5 billion. Her strategy was to scare off everybody else, and to some extent, she succeeded. I mean, Sanders is a different candidate, but you can't look at Lincoln Chafee or Martin O'Malley as serious candidates. So she pretty much has succeeded in that strategy. I guess the point I want to make for your audience and your viewers is to say, if we ask the same questions about the presidential nominating process that we've been asking for the last 20 years or more, we're never going to understand.
Well, let me
it's
stop,
all
let
about,
me stop you there
you
for a
have to
second.
see it through the lens of money, or you're not going to understand it.
The Citizens United case allowed
everything.
One person with a heck of a lot of money to back one candidate and give that candidate hope. I think that's a part of it, isn't it, Jackie?
Exactly. I mean, you know what that does is it goes against our feelings of democracy, and it disenfranchises the normal voter. It disenfranchises my students. There's just too much big of a say from the biggest purse in this, and that big purse can throw their money towards any of those candidates.
Exactly right. Now, we're joined via Skype with Jeanette Hoffman. She's a Republican strategist. We've been talking about, with all due respect, the clown car of Republican candidates, because every time the door opens, two or three pop out. How did we get, let me ask you the same question I started with, how did we get this many?
Well, I think the race kind of began with no clear front runner. So it's almost like the more candidates get in the race, the more think they can do it too, and they want to get in the race as well. I think of the clown car, Donald Trump is definitely the biggest clown in this race, but we'll get to that later. But the way the early primary rules work, it's not a winner take all in those early states, New Hampshire and Iowa and South Carolina. That favors a very big field, because you don't have to win all of the delegates to win the state. You can get a percentage, say 10 or 15%. And the more candidates that are in the race, the better each candidate thinks they have a chance to win.
All right, we're going to deal with Jeb, minus the last name, just Jeb in a moment. But let's take a look at Donald Trump's announcement this week, where I am told, and I have read as well, that he hired some actors to be there to sort of fill out the crowd. But let's take a look at what he said in announcing his candidacy for presidency.
I am officially running for President of the United States, and we are going to make our country great again.
Now, putting aside the remarks with regard to Mexicans being rapists and so on and so forth, does this guy stand a chance?
No.
Absolutely not.
No.
Are we agreed on a no here?
Well,
Right.
let's put it this way. He has higher name recognition than most of the candidates. And if you're using the Fox News, CNN benchmark of 10%, he's got a greater possibility of participating in the debates than a lot of the other candidates who are much more
But
substantive.
isn't the
but he'll-
line blurred between entertainment and politics? I mean, he's on The Apprentice. You know him as sort of a showman.
Right. He'll
Again,
self-destruct in the debate
You think so?
because if you heard the whole campaign announcement, and I heard most of it, the guy simply loves to hear himself talk. There's very little logic to what he says. There's very little continuity to what he says, and in the course of saying whatever he says, he manages to offend a whole lot of people.
So you like him, is what you're saying.
I
Let's talk to,
like him.
hold on, let's
I
talk to
think-
Jeanette for just a moment, because
Sure.
Jeanette, these remarks about immigrants being rapists and criminals and so on, the Republican Party certainly doesn't want to hear that in a year in which they need Hispanic votes.
Well, I think, first of all, I think Donald Trump's rhetoric and remarks are just very toxic, not only to the Republican Party, but to the political process in general. He does not contribute anything to the national debate. And in fact, I think he is trying to be as inflammatory and ridiculous as possible to help his TV career and whatever reality TV show he's presenting next, The Apprentice. Maybe he'll do a presidential reality TV show, who knows. But the fact of the matter is, Donald Trump is not good for the political process in general in this country. And some of the things he said are just so off the wall and offensive, you just have to shake your head.
All right, now you're jumping all over this, Jeff.
Well, sure. You know, going on with what Jeanette said, is why is this man getting so much of our attention? Why is he getting so much airtime on every single network?
I think I know the answer to that,
Well-
David.
Well, to go back to what David said, Trump is going to make a lot of money out of this, even more than he has, and all the smaller candidates on the Republican side, they can write books, etc. There's a lot of money to be made just by announcing that you are a candidate for the president.
All right, we have a lot of-
Every candidate has to have his or her billionaire, okay?
Yes.
Hillary Clinton's got the Walton family. Marco Rubio has Norman Brayman from Miami. You've got the Koch network supporting Scott Walker
Don't forget Adelson.
and
Sure.
Adelson. And of course, and so what you have with Donald Trump, he's the first self-financed billionaire who's going to finance himself. So if you don't attract the billionaire, you have to be one yourself. He said the other day that he thought he could spend $100 million from his own funds on this campaign and hardly break into a sweat. I mean, that's what he's going to do,
And that's
he
where
will
we-
be
and that's where
and
we
he
are.
will be outrageous,
that's
and
where
he'll
we
be
are.
disruptive, and that's his style.
We have the dirty dozen here to cover, so I want to cover as many as
Go
possible.
ahead.
Let's hear what Jeb Bush said the other day in announcing his candidacy for presidency.
The question for me is, what am I going to do about it? And I've decided I'm a candidate for President of the United States of America.
Now, here's what troubles me about that. Number one, the softball question they should have seen a mile away, which was, did you agree with your brother in the invasion of Iraq? He wasn't ready for. And I can't believe that somebody didn't discuss that with him before he started doing these interviews pre the announcement.
Well, he may not be as good a candidate as we thought he was. I mean, we presume that the Bush name carries with it a lot of gloss, a lot of professionalism, a lot of experience. But if you took a look again at that whole announcement that he gave earlier this week, it was highly scripted. He seemed rather unprepared. He was looking at his prompts throughout the speech, and he just looked like he was a highly scripted candidate. And clearly, he needs to do a lot of homework. He doesn't quite seem to relate to people the way we thought he did. And so I think he's a little bit unprepared. Now, of course, this is the time to iron all this out. I mean,
Right.
we pay very close attention because we're all pundits.
Right.
He's got a year and a half to sort of get it all together. But he didn't get out of the starting gate very well.
Well, let's transition from Jeb Bush to Hillary Clinton, if we might, for a moment. It's almost as if I get the feeling that they don't really desire running, but they almost have to. They have the name, they have the financing, so let's do it. I got from Hillary Clinton that she was a bit stale, and I don't know why, but I'm just foreseeing if she wins or if Jeb Bush wins, that we might have more gridlock because the name Bush, the name Clinton.
Well, I mean, I'm one of those who goes against the grain on this. I don't believe that new is better in politics. I actually believe that old is better in politics. If you understand the American political system and the separation of powers and all the deal making that needs to be done to actually make the system work, you want people with a lot of experience. You don't want newbies. We've had a newbie in the White House now for 8 years. Didn't work very well. We had a newbie in the White House before that, Mr. Bush. The only way he got saved was because he was surrounded by a lot of wisdom from his Republican advisors. I think we do need people with experience. Now, that's not the only talent we need. We need people with good vision, with good policies and sound judgment. But old and experience is an absolute prerequisite to be an effective politician in America.
And the name doesn't help. Jeanette Hoffman, I'm curious on the Republican end, who you think is the most dangerous candidate on the Democratic side. We have Hillary Clinton, we have Governor Michael O'Malley, we have former Governor of Rhode Island, Lincoln Chafee, and Senator Bernie Sanders.
Well, I think, listen, if I was a Democrat, I would not be happy with any of those nominees right now. I think Hillary is the candidate to beat, just because of the sheer amount of money that she will raise. I think on the Republican side, I really like Jeb Bush, and talking back to the history and being old and experienced in politics. What I like about Jeb Bush is that for a Republican, he is appealing to millennial voters and he's appealing to new voters. And I think he's the best candidate who can win in November because he's reaching out to Hispanics. He's reaching out to young people. I mean, his announcement was on Snapchat, which I don't even know how to use, Instagram, and he slow jammed the news with Jimmy Fallon. I disagree. I think Jeb Bush is very relatable. And I think you're going to see more of that as a campaign continues.
Let me hold you.
Hillary Clinton, not so much.
Isn't there an argument to be made for a new wave, and that new wave might be Marco Rubio, a younger guy who is just starting out? You mentioned you have a problem with on-the-job training, but I mean, maybe Marco Rubio.
No, but wait, I got to say something. Jeanette, you can dress him up. That doesn't mean you can take him out. Just because he can tweet doesn't mean that he's a new millennial. I mean, the face of the new millennial, and just the outside face, is Marco Rubio.
Right.
But you scratch the surface, underneath, he's an old man. He is against women's choices. He is such an old-time Republican.
Well, how much of that is him, and how much of it is the box he has to fit in to meet the Tea Party
It
approval?
really doesn't matter. What really matters is that is what he stands for, and that is what people will vote for him on.
Let's talk to the money man for just a moment. There's some issues with Marco Rubio. Apparently he can't, or he's perceived to be unable to manage his money. There was some faux scandal they had about 4 parking tickets over, I think, 10 years that he had, which was, I thought, in my opinion, nonsense. But let's talk about the money. He's had issues in dealing with money. He's been given upfront money for books he's written, and apparently has not managed it well. We had to actually borrow money.
Frank, the broad issue, whether it's Marco Rubio or Scott Walker or any of the candidates we're talking about this afternoon, the amount of money that is involved in this campaign distorts the process. It corrupts the process. It doesn't really oblige the candidates to address the issues that ordinary Americans are concerned about.
That's
right. The statistic I mentioned a minute ago about $7 billion in 2012, the last presidential cycle.
Yes.
60% of the Superfund money came from 99 Americans. So 99 people are determining who gets the nomination. And I'm reminded of what Boss Tweed said in the 19th century. I don't care who does the electing so long as I get to do the nominating. And that's the reality that we're dealing with today. Super PAC bosses, whether it's the Koch brothers, Norman Brayman, the Waltons and so forth, they're going to determine the complexion of our electoral process.
We have 1 minute left. We're so far out that it almost seems kind of silly. But who would you think? We'll start with Jeanette, and we'll come back to the panel. Jeanette, early on the Republican end, who do you think wins that one?
I think Jeb Bush is the candidate to beat right now.
Okay, all right, Alan.
Much too early. With 12 people, there's going to be some crashing.
And there's more to come.
And there's more to come. It's the Republican nomination is wide open. It's totally unpredictable, and I wouldn't even venture a thought on that because I think they're all going to crash into each other.
Very safe. It's almost like a demolition derby.
Right.
All right, David.
And I'll go ditto with Alan on that, and also with your point, the more to come. I mean, again, it's the money game that's out there. People will stay in this for as long as they can. There'll be other uncandidates.
And sometimes longer than they should, because years ago, before Citizens United, they would drop out after New Hampshire or South Carolina because they ran out of money.
It changed everything, Frank. Citizens United has changed politics in America, and until we get a handle on that and get a bipartisan agreement as to restoring significant and legitimate public financing of our campaigns, not only at the presidential but at the congressional levels as well. We're going to continue to have this charade and theater.
But that will take experience.
You take quickly.
Jeb.
You think so?
Yep.
All right, that was quick. It's only one word, no last name. I want to thank you all, and Jeanette Hoffman as well, joining us via Skype today. We appreciate your time.
Thanks.
All right, coming up, the American dream of home ownership evolves, what it looks like now, and why when Fresh Outlook continues.